This program is designed to provide general information with regards to the subject matters covered. This information is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, sponsors, or station are engaged in rendering any specific and personal, medical, financial, legal, counseling, professional service, or any advice. You should seek the services of competent professionals before applying or trying any suggested ideas.
Good morning, truth seekers and true crime junkies. Welcome back to another episode of Hit the Road Jack, Finding the Zodiac. Last week, we covered a 9/11 special, which meant we kind of sped up the process and went into 2001 with some correspondence by the Zodiac. And that was obviously a little bit out of order and might have been a little tough to take down because we hadn't baby stepped you from one solve to the next up to that point and how it got there. I did learn a little bit about what she is using or what she means. Harriet Suchet is working with what she calls the stenographic code. If anybody is familiar with a court recorder or anybody who takes shorthand by their little typewriters that actually enter characters for words, and then of course they build up 2, 3, 4 characters will indicate maybe a 4-syllable word. This is basically what she's talking about, and it kind of just finally dawned on me. It's not really so much an acronym that she's breaking down, but a stenographic code. And I was told not too long ago by somebody that the Zodiac had their own alphabet. At first, I didn't really I thought an alphabet's an alphabet, A through Z, right? Well, I guess what he's actually meaning is possibly that stenographic version of an alphabet, and that particular characters relate to particular things. And now I'm kind of starting to understand how it is that she breaks these solves apart when she sees these repeating stenographic codes. She knows to immediately pull them out and then work with or deal with what is left over to try to solve that message. So today we're going to have Nolan Del Campo and Terry Batcher back with us today. I'd like to welcome them to the show.
Hi, kids.
Good morning, guys. How are you doing?
Good.
Great.
Very good.
Some exciting stuff today. I spent pretty much all day yesterday working on the 4 new letters. And of course, it yielded some extremely interesting information, which I think is going to help to baby step everybody into these messages. I just wanted to take a step back and look at the compilation that the FBI has of the known Zodiac correspondence or suspected Zodiac correspondence, because today we're going to talk about 4 letters that are not included in this list. But one of the things that I wanted to bring about was, again, I just keep hitting on this portion of this 42478 letter where they say they obtained a DNA sample, but it was not an authentic Zodiac letter. I'm going to surmise that the only way they could have made that opinion is that based on the other DNA samples that were pulled from letters, it was not consistent with that. So they then ruled that out based on DNA. But we've already heard evidence that Jack used a spit can that contained multiple people's spit in order to actually seal his envelopes. We do know that based on Stephen Dewhurst's book that the FBI indicated that Jack's letter actually came back with 2 different DNA samples underneath the envelope lip, which would actually kind of coincide with Dennis's statement that Jack used a spit can with other people's spit in it to seal his letters. That sounds absolutely disgusting. I don't know if I want to be fingering around inside of somebody's spit, but I get if you know that DNA is a possibility for them to find because he is in the know, then you would be doing whatever it took to protect that. As I said, the next 4 communications are not in this correspondence, but I also hopped over to the handwritten note, the bus bomb that we just spoke about last week. It indicated the location of the envelope was unknown. Now, the interest that this drew to me is because this list had to have been compiled by 1991, since the FBI discontinued their case on the Zodiac in 1991. So by that time, this letter was in that file, and they are stating that the location of the envelope is unknown. So as early as 1991, the FBI doesn't know where this envelope is. However, Tom Voigt has a high resolution black and white scan of it on his website. And I thought, fancy that. How does he
Of course. Of course he would.
How does he have this envelope when it's unknown, or its whereabouts is unknown as early as 1991? And I think, or I thought, Tom Voigt put his site up somewhere around 96, 98. Do you know, Terry? It was, I mean, it was later in the 90s.
I haven't followed him that closely, but he's definitely their darling, isn't he?
He is. And when I looked into the Wayback Machine, and I kind of pilfered his website, his old one from AOL, I was really trying to get the original instances. Once I came onto the scene, well, actually, I think once Dennis recognized that Jack we started to see anything from 2001 and before start to go missing from the internet. So we couldn't get these images anymore. But to the same token, it just means, well, and I've stated before, I believe that Tom Voigt's father worked for LA Times, which is one of the major players in this particular game.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. So it kind of is running in tandem with the newspapers being involved with whatever is going on. And now he is the holder of all information, whether it be newsreels, police reports, crime scene photos. He is the hold all for this stuff. Anyways.
Control of all things.
In control of all things. Absolutely. Right. I'm going to go ahead and throw up the presentation at this point, and start with the first letter, which I know that Terry B, you have talked about this one several times. I just want to make note, I do not know who put these letters up in and around here. This was not my work. My intention was obviously, but I thought it was good because they're pulling letters from different areas that are showing a consistency within the actual communication itself. And I think that was an attempt to prove that, yes, in fact, it was a Zodiac communication. This was a letter that was mailed out of Fairfield to San Francisco Chronicle. It kind of made me feel like we're seeing the baby steps of the Zodiac leave the Bay Area. So we're starting to see letters that are coming up further and further away from the Bay Area as he's moving towards the South Lake Tahoe area.
Right. Now, this Zodiac didn't start the Zodiac speaking letters till August of '69. And this has capital K-I-N-G at the end of speak. Well,
that's actually still technically a lowercase k, but it is speaking. And I know that this one is in December 7th of 1969. It's a turn myself in letter. We all recognize the turn myself in. We saw it in the Black Dahlia. He said turning in. We will see it in future crimes where he claims he will turn himself in. He also says, okay. We see okay a lot in a lot of these particular communications and ciphers. So the message itself states, this is the Zodiac speaking. I just need help. I will kill again. So expect it anytime. Now there will be a cop. Then I will turn myself in. Okay. Interesting statement, but we also had this code down here, and I took a chance at trying to play with codes again. The Fairfield letter decode, if I used Oranchak's period 19 solve, I ended up with something that almost started to come out like the iron IBDTWAGI. So of course I'm not coming out with a clear message. There's also a new symbol that's being used inside of this communication, and it is technically new to both the harden solve and the period 19 solve. These particular greater than, less than signs up here, we did see those in the period 19 solve, but we did not see them in the hardens 408. So one of the things that did come about when I actually pulled this solve together is we found the word death by using period 19, and we found the word die by using the Sergeant Lynch key code in the harden solve. That to me was extremely interesting. These could be the keys to breaking these particular messages, though I'm not that astute in ciphers. I can substitute a symbol for a letter, but
starts out HER just like the 340 cipher.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And so they try, I'm assuming they're trying to state that this is not authentic or that this is a copycat, but I don't find that if it was a copycat, they likely would have used exactly the same code. You know, if it was somebody just trying to imitate the Zodiac, they would have had to gone with what they knew. I don't think that they would have inserted or brought in new symbols that had not been seen before. What do you think?
The capital K also is in the plain text above for the A in death. That he's accentuating that it's a capital K.
Right.
Above the A.
Well, and this is almost similar to the Zodiac that's spelled in the AIK instead of IAK that we saw in the 408 or the 340, whichever that one was in.
On the last document, it also had ZO and then DIAC, separated.
Yes. And so we have two, but these letters did not equate to Z or to O. Either way, we saw the use of not only a lowercase I, but a capital I, and we know that there was many manipulations in the Black Dahlia, the Sorry Mary letter, with the manipulation of lowercase and capital case I's in places they didn't belong. So again, that's leading me right back to Zodiac type 101 stuff. Sure. So I'm suggesting that this is not a copycat, that this is actually an evolving message, in which case he decided to use or step up the game by using new symbols in order to maybe not have this solved by the people who weren't supposed to solve it. Either way, death and die run tandem. So I started to look at some of the attributes that are in the actual stopping and starting of the circles. And we've done this before. So I brought this up because it looks like the circles are definitely consistent, if not identical, between the Fairfield letters. They're clocking out. Down here are the actual Fairfield letters at the bottom. They are clocking out between approximately midnight. So we see the entrance and the closing of, my mouse is not wanting to work this morning. The opening and closing of the actual circle is right there at the 12 o'clock hour, all the way over to the 2 o'clock hour in this particular Zodiac symbol. So when I went back and I looked, we can clearly see that at approximately 1 to 1:30 is where the opening and closing was occurring with the Zodiac letters, with a deviation of 2 o'clock in one of the sun symbols and a deviation of 11 o'clock in the actual another sun symbol. We see again up here that opening and closing. Now we take a look at Jack's, and what we find is we either have him at dead center top, oops, right there. And then, of course, as we go over, we find more at the 1:30. Here we find that deviation back at the 11 o'clock hour. Again, a deviation back at the 11 o'clock hour. So it looks like not only are their deviations similar, but their standard or their natural use of starting and stopping is similar as well.
I've never seen that one in the lower right-hand corner before. Where'd you find that?
Which one?
The lower right-hand corner. Yeah.
That one? That came in with the bleeding knife. That's a Fairfield. That's a Fairfield letter we're going to cover here today. So these three all came from the two Fairfield letters that are not acknowledged on the Zodiac list from the FBI. Cool. So I took it one step further and I started to look for more clues to see if we could actually show or support that this was coming from the same individual. This is the first time we actually see a zip code used, and we know that there's a big push during this time frame to start using zip codes in order to direct the mail in the correct direction. So this might have thrown people off thinking, wow, we've got a zip code now, when the Zodiac has never even so much as used a zip code, let alone a full address. But I started to see things like 5 in Mission. Let's go back to Black Dahlia. 5 in Hill.
5+, yeah.
Yes, yeah, the plus and sign. Down here, he used 5th, including the TH and a hyphen, which we know Jack and the Zodiac are huge on hyphens, and Mission. So we are seeing even a consistency between the way these authors are writing with the other crimes I've already told you I believe are involved. I took that one step further and I thought, let's take a look at these number 5s and see what's going on. We have a very long top overhang, consistent with both. We have a very long backside of the downstroke of the number 5 before it turns into the bull at the bottom. And we have very tiny little bulls. Now, we do have an exaggerated exit stroke here, but as I tell everybody, your exit and your entrance can be as different from one execution to the next. We want to look at the main structure and see how that works out. So I went ahead and I put down a slant bar over the top of the overhang of the 5, and we found that that slant, copy and pasted to the Black Dahlia, was identical. I put a slant bar down to see where the bull ends and how much of the overhang actually hangs out of the number 5 past the bull itself. And we can see that those are both consistent. In fact, they're even hitting almost to that left-hand area of the corner of the top of the number 5, leaving a significant amount of the 5 itself hanging over. I also placed one on the back side of the downstroke of the number 5. That's there in green. And we can see that once I copy and pasted the bar from one to the next, we had an identical slant. And we also have this little angularity that occurs right here as he turns back to make the bottom bowl of the 5. So these are all consistencies. It would tell me that this number 5 is highly likely to have been written by the same exact author. Otherwise, I feel like we would have seen some significant differences.
Right. I see it. I like that H, right? By the way. You'll see that H elsewhere.
Which H? Oh, yes.
5+ Hill. That's the Ramsey note too. I'll have that type of I used to call it wing ding. Now I'll call it stenographic.
It's an interest. Yeah. I know that the TH down here, this is very similar with the 1986 Sacramento letter, which was not shown to the public until much later, or at least probably until Dennis had gotten his hands on it and started producing it on the internet. And so that is likely why they had already concluded that 1986 letter claiming plus or minus 100 victims was consistent with the Zodiac.
It almost looks like he said 5+ H too on that lower left-hand document instead of, when you underline that, he likes that plus sign, so he's got the 5+ H. Is he playing a little game there with his coding? I don't know.
I don't know. I think he was just trying to write that 5 and mission in a different manner. This comes from the Halloween card much later.
I would assume TH, but when you look at the top, it's 5+ mission. So
man,
different mission. I mean,
no, if 5+ H mission wouldn't make any sense. So, all right. We did have, and I wanted everybody to note that obviously businesses are using the zip code at this particular time frame, and we will see the letters coming up here next where the zip code is included on the return business mail. I wanted to show everybody how this drop down of the 94109 is an identification factor. The way you fill out a check or the way you fill out an envelope can identify you as well, especially if it's consistent with your known samples. Most people, like myself, will write the zip code after the state in line, just like it's done in this business note here. Other people will actually, like Jack, drop down that zip code to beneath the city and the state. And this is something I've notated in this presentation or in the handwriting examination. We can see that in some cases, it's just barely at the last letter of the city and then underneath the state itself. So when I started to look at this, we have, again, the drop down is underneath the city. This one here below the second envelope in regards to these letters shows that the zip code is literally listed almost underneath the last letter of San Francisco and underneath the word California. So that is directly consistent. And we see that drop down of that zip code in other communications, such as the D.B. Cooper case and also in the Groucho Marx Christmas card purportedly sent by the Zodiac in, I want to say 1990. It was supposedly mailed, but was not found until a number of years, 8-10 years afterwards.
Lots of JTs too, compound, single, symbol.
Lots of JTs everywhere. Yeah. Everywhere you find an F, we have that elongation that tells us, look at point. It's a pointer, basically. Stare at me. Right. Anything that is a pop-out letter in handwriting and graphology is considered a pop-out for the reason that it stands out above everything else.
Sure. It's almost like it says trance. Go ahead. Sorry.
Where?
Well, like
trance, like in sand trance.
Pop-up trance. It puts in a trance.
And if you went phonically, Terrence, right?
Right. Exactly.
I mean, hypothetically speaking.
Yep. Absolutely.
So here is one of the, here's the second letter that they did not, or they do not show on that list of known zodiac letters. It is a day-by-day forecast for Cancer, and it is actually for November, which I found was interesting because I have attributed these particular communications to D.B. Cooper, and this is my belief is the foretelling of the crime that is about to come. The messages are, these messages are being sent farther and farther away from the Bay Area. Just like I said, we're moving from Fairfield. Now we're in Sacramento, and we can see how we're making our way out of the Bay Area. We know that Jack is eventually here very shortly going to be moving to that new life in paradise, as Orange Jack's Solve stated. And there's a hotel in South Lake Tahoe named Paradise, and his daughter works in South Lake Tahoe, in fact, at the Sahara Casino, where Donna Lass, one of the next victims, goes missing. So this is sent on December 10th. Go ahead. Sent December 10th, 1969 to the SAC-B. It's a November day-by-day forecast for Cancer, mailed from Sacramento, California to the SAC-B newspaper using a SAC-B prepaid business envelope and cutouts. So he basically just used their mail to mail back to them this particular little taunt. Oh, come on. Funny. All right. So the taunt actually is, it states, and there are cutouts that are on top of this day-by-day forecast. And these cutouts, again, are Black Dahlia. There's Zodiac. Using cutouts is one of the methodologies that are employed in the act of making these communications. And it says action guide. To me, that kind of raised my little feelers about D.B. Cooper, because we had action in that particular crime, and letters to a paratrooping club. It says want Zodiac. Bird is hidden, is actually dropped down beneath, but it almost looks like he's either saying the bird is hidden, fly south, or the bird is fly south and the hidden watch. I'm not really quite sure which way, but we know it's always a word game. We did. What's that?
Flight 555 too, wasn't it?
Yes, I haven't gotten to that one yet. Sorry. So basically, in the word fly, we see that the letter L is completely sideways and up in the air, which is again a standout, and that brings us back to the letter L's that we've been seeing in the communications, just randomly popping up in Gall and Sharp and Black Dahlia. We also see the watch, which is the time reference, and the Elizabeth Short and all the others that are related to a watch. We see flight 555, which is upside down like the cutouts that are found in the Donna Lass card Peek Through the Pines, where it said upside down around in the snow was actually inverted upside down and pasted onto the actual postcard. Let's see.
I got more things I can add to what you got on that page there, ideas, but.
No, absolutely.
Well, a 555 integrated circuit came out about that time. It was a big deal at the time. It was a timing circuit. It was for.
Okay, but does that timing circuit have like the titanium?
I wonder if they're in their grandest scheme with things that, flight 555 and, that timing circuit, if there's a relationship there, magic amulet, what do you make of that? What do you think of that?
I think that's ideas, well, I think when we talk about some of the other things that we're talking about, including like on the Dear Draft Board letter, where he talks about the Mandela and the godlike presence and all of that stuff, like he's running this theme through, and I'm not sure what to make of the magic amulet just yet, but I did notate that is some type of a connection to the same type of language that was being used in Dear Draft Board.
It's something you wear around your neck, though, right? An amulet.
I would think so. Yeah.
I'm thinking so flight a device that he wore.
Flight 555 upside down. To me, that's 3 5s, right? And in gambling, that could be a full house. 3 5s could be a winning hand. I actually attributed it to flight 305 of D.B. Cooper, because we know the word play in the word game.
That's right.
Right. So we know the word game that the Zodiac like to play. So flight 555 or 3 5s or 3 of 5 would be 305. So it was just an idea I ran with after looking at these letters and knowing that the Zodiac wrote the D.B. Cooper stuff. The FBI claims that Zodiac foretold of his crimes. If that's correct, this could be foretelling of the D.B. Cooper case to come in November 21st, 1971, with Flight 305, which was hijacked from Washington that flew south to Reno, Nevada. And the reason why I say that is because it is a forecast, and the forecast is for November, and D.B. Cooper occurred in November of 1971. So here he may be, I got goosebumps, guys.
seems to fit as his whole modus operandi.
Right. So the next one was also a day-by-day forecast for Leo. So that message that I ciphered, I think it was maybe 2 weeks ago or last week, where it indicated that call Libra. So we've got somebody who's acting as Zodiac. We've got a message coming out of the newspapers that's saying call Libra. And now we have forecasts, day-by-day forecasts, Leo and Cancer, which led me to what if Zodiac is a group and there are 12 players, possibly with a 13th being that Imperial Wizard or whoever it might be at the higher end. And the magic amulet could play into the Imperial Wizard, I would think.
I think it makes sense.
Right?
I think you made sense of all of that. Absolutely.
So on December 11th, the day following is when this day-by-day forecast comes out. It's mailed to San Francisco Newspaper Printing Company. It's the November day-by-day forecast for Leo, and it was mailed from San Francisco, California, again in a prepaid business envelope, using cutouts just like we see in these cases. Now, I flipped this one sideways to try and kind of get an idea of what this thing had to say. We can see that several of these particular cutouts are completely washed out based on the copy. What I can see is this DEC, Decembers. So if he's using this DEC overlapping, it also looked to me like there was an ME here. So it could be members. And I don't know why this garbage would be placed on the top of it. However, it makes more sense to say December's lucky, right? He's mailing these in December. The D being overlapped by this E shows that it looks like an L again. It makes it look like an L. I had to come to a conclusion well after notating this as an L that this was actually a D. We get to see the words. Okay, so I have a legible cutout, which is 2+ words, possibly containing the letters ME, and the symbols for L, and then the embers is where I then came back and I need to go back and add that DEC to this. December's lucky. Illegible 2 words again, and the word mystery. Mystery is something that is again a running MO. We see the word time, and then the illegible cutout hidden. A thrilling phenomenon. See Harry Ott. I don't know if you know who Harry Ott is, either of you. I did pull up some information on somebody named Harry Ott. And the way the C is separate and actually cut out, again, that's a standout. So it says, see Harry Ott can be ridden, or chariot can be written is what he wanted ridden, as he wanted us to know. But Harry Ott was a German diplomat with the United Nations and later a politician. The clue possibly to Bush involvement with Germany and greed. I'm just throwing out some ideas here. 1986 letter from Zodiac uses the word mystery, and so does the I-45 killer in Tim Miller's letter. And a murder was dubbed the Corvette Concepts Mystery. And then we had later Midnight Mystery as a greeting card that was sent to Robert Graysmith in the 2000s. And I'm starting to clump him in now. I thought he was just a greedy journalist that, went rogue making a book and telling lies to make some money. But he might be part of this whole entire group of individuals if the Zodiac is choosing him to personally write to, just like Tom Voigt.
You do know, Nanette, that a lot of famous people in history relied on astrology to make their decisions.
Right. Farmer's Almanac. Yeah, Farmer's Almanac.
Ronald Reagan did. Hitler did. A lot of people did that. Yeah,
wow.
People on that strata. They made their decisions based on astrology.
Well, we also found the words train, hang-ups, which is a railway theme. We see the upside-down Christian cross. That equates to the Zodiac's victim 13 card. We see it in the Tim Miller letter, and then we see illegible cutout again and warring love emotions. We see the words dangerous ride now, and then flight 3 of a kind. So now we're back to that gambling thought, right? And so that's why 3 of a kind, if I was 3 of a kind, that's 3 of what's the kind? 5, 305, DB Cooper hijacking. Right. It's run. I got goosebumps again, guys. The brain's chemical reaction for being correct. So I also pulled up one of the pieces of the Tim Miller letter from the I-45 and Texas murders, and I saw another version of these random cutouts pasted all over the actual letter itself, which is very consistent with what we see having happen here. In fact, on this particular one, we see the word railway. On this one, we see the word train. Let's see. You could look for my clues. Photo. Photos is something that Harriet is decoding in her solves, that there are individuals who have photos of these crimes, and that these photos are being passed around to the powers that be, who are looking to have that proof, I'm assuming, that that person was dead. So I just pulled these out side by side just to kind of show. What's that?
In the Son of Sam murders, there's allegations that some of the murders were filmed and that the films were sold on the black market to rich weirdos.
Yeah,
right. I wouldn't put it.
I think that's a good idea. That makes sense. There's evidence of that too.
Right. Oh yeah. I mean, all of Harriet's decodes from the 70s on start talking about photographs. He's saying you could look for my clues, a photo. You know, there's evidence here. It could be the watch. It could be the train, you know. But here I put side by side just to kind of show you the pop out. I think my mouse is dying. Oh no. So we see the L's up here at the top. And then we see the watch and time. We see hidden and hidden. We see mystery and then Corvette Concepts fiasco mystery from I-45. We see train. We see railway. We see upside down crosses. All of these themes are running in tandem. This one shocked me, Terry. Look at this. This is the DB Cooper, one of the DB Cooper envelopes that's written in on November 22nd of 1971, using this odd construction, which I really kind of attributed that to the symbol on the Halloween card. But when I saw that E on this cutout, I went, holy crud. We are dealing with absolutely the same person.
Yep. Gigantic JT, combo JTs, single, gigantic N, look at the N. Jumping out, look at the gigantic W in the way, the P's, look at the way there. Boy, and talk about enunciation. How many ways to enunciate, you know?
Right.
And that the little tiny O in Reno. You know?
Yeah, I'm sure that there's a I'm sure there's a message in that envelope alone, because we've seen Harriet use all of the information on that and turn it into a message. And it has the proper stamp too. I mean, that's a Zodiac Eisenhower stamp all day long. And Eisenhower is the first president to accept, what was it, Doug Coe from the family, the annual prayer breakfast leader and runner who works with all the heads of every single country, whether they are vicious criminals and violent offenders who are killing their own kind or not, putting together prayer breakfasts for these people to come together. So Eisenhower was the first person mentioned in that docuseries on Netflix that was involved with
your friends close, keep your friends close.
With combining the church with state.
Cool. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. That's
right.
The old saying. So yeah, that's interesting. That's cool.
Now, so I went a little bit further into some of the DB Cooper stuff because I wasn't really sure if this, by him blocking all of this, and we are to add the ME to the members over here, members lucky. We just saw a lot of rhetoric that was coming out of the Zodiac in regards to the DB Cooper case, where membership became a very huge part of the entire persona of this letter writer. And of course, these letters again are also written in December, so it takes us back to December's Lucky, right? He's gotten away with this crime. And we know that in the DB Cooper caper with many of the communications, he reversed the DB to say BD, as if he was calling himself out as being responsible for Black Dahlia.
You know, that he cannot make a document without being cryptic, structurally cryptic. The last one,
no.
Structure. Yeah, he's been capable of it. Look at the IP at the end of membership, and then look at secretary as 3 sections. You can see I started
actually going back into and delving into the whole remote viewing that was introduced on the movie Suspect Zero. It was a program the military ran out of US AMRID back east. And the idea that there was an FBI agent who could remote view other killers, not only kill them, but tell on them. And that might be, we might be looking at this as though the Zodiac is taking claim or credit for some of these murders, when actually he is literally telling on that particular person he killed that was responsible for those murders. And I think that's kind of the way that Harriet's solves are starting to look, that he is narking out other people and he handled the business. That person's now dead. I took care of it, kind of thing. So a very interesting concept, but I think if anybody hasn't seen the movie Suspect Zero, go get it, and get it with the additions, the editor's cut, because they actually have interviews, but from the man in the military that ran this program and how precise that they can be with it. And if you watch that movie, you cannot get an hour into it without having 2 pages of notes that are consistent with Jack Terrence.
And then there's actually a number of movies that are similar to what you're talking about.
It's called Suspect Zero. And notably, the head FBI agent in that particular movie, he is also the head of the clandestine operation of Blacklist, Harold, what's his name? Harold Cooper. So Harold Cooper running the Blacklist, who talks about all of these huge mob-related corporate espionage, that their job is to find the blacklisters, the people who can't be found that are underground. He runs the whole division of the clandestine, and they live in the post office. The building that they use, they call the post office. But basically the premise is this individual who was in Suspect Zero, privy to this type of operation that might be going on, they then used in the Blacklist series, which I find phenomenal. I can't get enough of that stuff. I watch it over and over again.
That's cool. I like a good movie. I'll watch that.
Right now, we did have the murder on December 11th, same day that one of the forecasts went out of Leona Roberts. Again, I thought that this could possibly have been related to Philip Hughes. She was 16 years old. She was living in Napa with her parents, but she was visiting her boyfriend in Rodeo. She was found at Bolinas Lagoon near Point Reyes on December 28th, 1969, which meant that she might have been kept for some time. She was bound with small cylindrical nylon strands like suture of fishing line. That is not in the realm of the Zodiac. We're used to hearing clothesline, white cord, different things. She was found nude. She had no marks on her body. It stated, if I'm to believe the information, she died from a virus, something about opening an old surgery scar that they then got infected and allowed her to basically become septic and die from it. It does not sound like something the Zodiac would be involved with, but I have it in here anyways, because we do have one victim listed on the murder map that Sandy Betts received that is in Rodeo. I did not find any other victims, and this would possibly make her the 8th victim if she was in fact a victim.
Any connectivity to money?
I don't know. Again, there's so limited. Honestly speaking, so limited. It does list that her mother was Eileen Roberts from Napa. Her father was Glenn Roberts of Vallejo. She had a brother named Clyde Roberts. So if I and a sister, Mrs. Vern Patterson, if I went back in and tried to research them, I'd probably find little to nothing, since internet wasn't around back in those days, and they're really considered nobodies in the world of the internet. So there might not be much, but I could try. It does say this would coincide with the letter from the Zodiac being mailed out of San Francisco, though. Except for the fact, if he had kidnapped her on the way, from Rodeo and then mailed the letter out of San Francisco on the same day. Otherwise, we've got some varying degrees. And I do believe, like I said, that Jack is back up more towards South Lake Tahoe at this point. So he is still traveling back to San Francisco.
So reiterate why you bring up this particular murder. I mean, what led you onto it, or
it's just an unsolved murder, and it's heavily talked about in the Zodiac world about being a possible victim. But we know that there's some people like Philip Hughes that is actively out there working on victims at this point in time as well. So there are other people this could be attributed to. There is a few pieces of or a few articles out there. It does state that Leona was a college student and going to her 21-year-old boyfriend's house to cook food, where it appears she may have been abducted. Witnesses had seen one person at least by the car, possibly two people that were involved in the abduction. And again, she was held for quite some time. That could lend to she is a Zodiac victim if we're looking at it from a group perspective, and somebody else held her and Jack did the abduction, or Jack did the dumping, or Jack just did the writing. I don't know. When you throw the whole group idea out there, it just kind of lends to so much more. Here is that bleeding knife of Zodiac, which also contains that JT structure, that compound, again, stenographic code if you want. Let's call it that rather than a monogram, right?
Well, if you could either both.
Yeah, if you could use one character to say JT, the letter F would be it. Yeah, this particular letter was, what's that?
Oh, when you're done, I'll say something.
This letter was mailed December 16th, 1969. It's called the Bleeding Knife Letter. It was mailed to the San Francisco Examiner, and it was mailed again from Fairfield. It says, "I will go for government life." Oh, hold on. This is the Zodiac speaking. "I just want to tell you this state is in trouble. I will go for the government life, so don't forget me. I will kill more people than you can count. You cops can count. So look for more blood. You better print." So it also has a small little code in there, or a cipher in there, and it says, "You will not catch me. I will kill in San Francisco 3 times, San Jose 1, Vallejo 6. It looks like he tried to trade places, but Napa 8, Sacramento 9, Fairfield 3, Oakland 8, and then he finishes it off with ha, 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 an exclamation following each of the ha's. So there's that fun statement we got again. But it does say, "I will go for government life," and perhaps Harriet Suchet solves the Zodiac ciphers are exactly what Jack is asking for, more work, and that he works for government. So don't forget me, because he won't be here in California anymore. And you better print, code in the middle to be ciphered. Now, if he's leaving to South Lake Tahoe, it doesn't mean he doesn't have to be in California anymore. But if he's leaving the Bay Area to go to South Lake Tahoe, could be a very good reason as to why he's leaving and won't be here in what they know as the Bay Area. The bleeding knife by knife is a symbolism of the Halloween card in Zodiac, and he estimates another 38 victims, or the theme that seems to revolve around a 38, which we will see in an upcoming letter as well. I do need to do a research on how many victims we have up to this point, or at least from this letter until he actually caps out and claims these 38 people, and see if we've got enough victims in that time frame.
The takeaway I want to point to is the Hartnell Shepherd attack, and the fact that they survived as long as they did, so they corroborate each other's testimony, and that was the debut of the Zodiac symbol and everything. And the blood on that knife is not real deep. The proportion of the knife is kind of goofy. It also looks like it's a K-type of a knife.
I don't know that I can so much make a relation to how much blood is on a hand-drawn knife versus what he
notice
used.
all the little poke marks he showed also on that? Like they're little stab wounds, small ones. Like, see how small they are?
I took those to be blood drops. They have dots in the center, and I just skipped across.
It was skillful the way he did that. You know, I mean, that's...
Well, okay, I still have a few bit more that we need to get into, but those circles, or those blood dots with the dots in the center, are extremely similar to the Gall and Sharp murder. The letter that was found there, they had the blood drops or the dripping and the shapes of those particular things. But somebody had indicated that the circle with the dot in the center is an indication for the eyeball in CIA terms, or in spy terms. So seeing these circles with the eye dot in the center is almost as if we have eyes on you.
Okay. Well,
This cipher may indicate a quadrant type scenario, as you have discussed, Terry, because we see not only the zodiac symbol, but 4 zodiac symbols around that particular thing. I've got about 5 minutes. I'm going to see how much of this I can get through real quick.
There's similar to a compass type of symbol too.
Right. So it could be indicating either A, he's all over the world,
but
or Zodiac is all.
K up on speak there in the upper left-hand corner. That's undoubtedly a large capital K.
Absolutely. That's when we start seeing those pop out Ks. So it may indicate the quadrant type. As you'd stated, you believe the 340 was designed. The 4 zodiac symbols could mean that he is at all 4 corners of the world as well, or the zodiac group is at all 4 corners of the world. We do have foreign murders that are mixed up in this, but I don't necessarily attribute them to Jack, not because I don't believe he has adequate ability to get there to do them, because I think he does, just because I have no proof, obviously, other than like Jack and Jill written on the wall or something like that. I did try to decode this, both using the Sergeant Lynch key code and the Orange Axe period 19. I did not really come up with anything. I'm going to again leave this to Cat's Eye or to Harriet. The zodiac symbol in itself represents the letter D in the Hardin solve and the letter A in the Orange Axe solve. So if anybody can do anything with that, y'all let me know.
The T and the K are the largest of all the symbols in there, although the zodiac one's quite large. The Z and zodiac is quite large, but standout lines.
This is the actual envelope that contains the bleeding knife, the circles with the dots, which to me represented blood dots. Again, it's kind of subjective. I mean, that's us in our view,
like
right?
A poke wound though in the middle.
Right.
Yeah.
So we see these circles with dots in them all over the communications. And that brings us, and I want to really get through this because this is an extremely interesting one, but the Dear Melvin letter received December 20th of 1969 says, Dear Melvin. Now, everybody needs to remember Melvin Belli and F. Lee Bailey are the biggest crime attorneys that exist, right? And he's asked for them to appear on a radio station because he wants to talk to them, albeit the person who called in was not the Zodiac. He says, Dear Melvin, this is the Zodiac speaking. I wish you a happy Christmas. The one thing I ask of you is this. Please help me. I cannot reach out for help because of this thing in me won't let me. I am finding it extremely difficult to hold it in check. I am afraid I will lose control again and take my 9th and possibly 10th victim. Please help me. I am drowning. At the moment, the children are safe from the bomb because it is so massive to dig it in, and the trigger mech requires much work to get it adjusted just right. But if I hold back too long from number 9, I will lose all control of myself and set the bomb up. Please help me. I cannot remain in control for much longer. This letter came with a piece of Paul Stein's shirt. I did start to see airmail being used by the government, so I kind of poked that one out and showed you that the piece of the shirt from Stein was listed right here, both in the known letter list and in another airmail on 12/29 of 69. The address construction is missing the comma between the city and state, which is unusual because we typically see that being used. The suicide letter was supposedly by drowning, and the killer states he couldn't help himself. That's the red lipstick killer all day long. Please help me.
Intentionally misspelled words.
Right.
Wow.
Please help me, and I cannot help myself is the words written by the lipstick killer during his crimes. I will lose control is another statement from the lipstick killings. Here we see the Zodiac misspell a word and then spell it correctly further down the letter, which we do see Jack doing some of these same things. And we already covered the airmail. This is kind of
crowding and expanding of words too.
Right. So basically, this is a list of some of the items that I took away from it when I was making a comparison in regards to spelling errors and things. But I'm now starting to look at those spelling errors differently. And that is because of the solve by, gosh, I got a minute, you guys. I want to get this code out real quick and we'll come back and we'll visit it more solidly next week. But Lawrence Waringham came up with, if you anagram the word Dear Melvin, it's rearranged. Dang it. If you anagram Dear Melvin, you come up with Ira Veldman or Ira Feldman, aka Ira Ike Feldman, who worked in the CIA MK Ultra as a handler with George White. And so his solve was that it is intentionally sent to Feldman, not not to Melvin Belli, and that if you double anagram Dear Melvin, it says, dare read my 11 even letter margins. And when you do this, you're taking the first and last letter or word from each line on the even level, which is something that the FBI talked about, but he came up with, am not safe from iCult and the trigger if control cannot help me. At this again, because wish much work this Christmas. This is all we've got time for. I wish we had made it to this today, you guys. Next week, I can't wait to do this. Is there anything either of you'd like to add, like super quick in less than 2 seconds?
Lots to talk about.
I know. We're going to come back to this solve next week. Everybody have a wonderful weekend, and we will see you next Friday. Absolutely. Thank you, you guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.